It seems there is trouble in refugee paradise as we finally get a factual update on how the 59 Afrikaners who were taken in by the Trump administration in the US are adjusting to their new lives.
Welcome back. You may recall last year we reported on the Trump administration's decision to limit the number of refugees entering the United States. That number was set at 7,500, a significant cut from the Biden era. In addition, the administration is prioritizing white South Africans for admission, a group it says faces persecution at home, something the South African government disputes.
I'll play the video just now, but I just want to give a quick reminder of what happened in case you were living under a rock for the last year and you missed this big story. In May 2025, Donald Trump announced that the USA was making a decision to admit South African Afrikaners who said they were facing discrimination and white genocide here at home. Yes, if you are a reasonable person, you might already be rolling your eyes and wondering, why are we even entertaining this narrative and these claims? After all, this lie has existed for a long time in South Africa and has come up at different times, being pushed by right-wing extremists like AfriForum, who have believed since the beginning that the post-1994 transition in South Africa was an existential threat to them. This propaganda of white genocide started to really get intensified around the 2000-2008 era, where Zimbabwe was experiencing land seizures and violence. And this became a convenient talking point for this group who were determined to warn the international community that South Africa would be like Zimbabwe. South Africa would be next. Something that the right-wing media in the West ate up without doing any research on the reality of South Africa, because to them, all African countries are interchangeable, and whatever happens in Zimbabwe was guaranteed to happen in South Africa, the facts be damned. In 2010, the murder of far-right figure Eugene Terreblanche became an accelerant for white genocide rhetoric among extremists and right-wing media. Terreblanche was a terrible human being who abused his workers and didn't see them as human, but of course, no one deserved to be brutally murdered in cold blood. So that story gained a lot of sympathetic international coverage and started the narrative of farm murders. Fast forward a few years later in 2018, the AfriForum managed to package the land expropriation debate neatly with farm murders into one exportable story. Their main talking point being that the state will seize land and whites are being hunted and killed for sport. All nonsense, of course. But this time, they did manage to finally get the attention of then US President Trump, who was serving his first term. He wrote a tweet directing US officials to study SA land seizures and the large-scale killing of farmers, as he put it, which amplified this story to a new level of legitimacy in US politics and media. Of course, a lot of independent fact-checking organizations and researchers pushed back and told Trump that this story was a hoax, it was based on lies, and even provided factual analysis, but that did not matter. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes. This brings us to present day, where Elon Musk and Trump brought back this white genocide rhetoric, this time with full force, and even offered asylum to Afrikaners who wanted to flee the evil government hunting them for sport in their homeland. Only 59 people accepted, which gave me a little hope in our white people in South Africa.
Well, now an investigation from the Free Press shows many of those white South Africans, also known as Afrikaners, are barely scraping by because of what they say are failures in U.S. government systems. Madeline Rowley is an investigative reporter for the Free Press, and she joins us now from Virginia to talk about this. And we should note the Free Press and CBS News share a parent company in Paramount Skydance. Madeline, good morning. Talk to us about the conditions some of these refugees say they are experiencing, because the administration made it seem as if they were being prioritized. They are a special group.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me on. Yes, I spoke to 10 South African refugees who told me that, they came to the U.S. hoping for a better life, a better situation, just as other refugees. And the government contracts with 7 refugee resettlement agencies that are paid hundreds of millions of dollars per year to provide safe, sanitary, and affordable housing. And unfortunately, what I heard from these Afrikaner refugees is that they're spending weeks in motels in unsafe areas. They're being offered housing that is full of mold, apartments that are full of mold in expensive areas. So each refugee is allotted $2,000, and all of that has been going to rent. So they're really left with nothing. And these agencies are supposed to help them apply to jobs, obtain temporary benefits such as SNAP and Medicaid, and basically other people from the community, like neighbors, are having to step in because they just, in some cases, can't even get a hold of their resettlement agencies.
You know, I didn't make this video to gloat. I actually feel a bit sorry for some of these refugees because I think they were manipulated. I think they were used as pawns in international relations that they did not understand. I think they were used as pawns in the AfriForum trying to advance their own narrative. And they really exploited some of the hard conditions of these Afrikaners, and they used them as a face of white genocide and as a face of advancing a right-wing media narrative. That is very unpopular, by the way, and it's unpopular for a reason. There's a reason why South Africa is never going to go back to that kind of life. There's a reason why the world is always rejecting right-wing extremism. It always comes up and it flares up, just like it is flaring up now, mainly exasperated by Donald Trump being the president. But there's a reason why all of that never lasts, and the world always goes back to being progressive. The world always goes back to kind of communal politics. It always goes back to left-wing rhetoric, because that's how human beings are. Everything that is being sustained by hate, everything that is being sustained by people trying to be very primitive and stick to their own small groups without wanting to interact with others, people wanting to take over the world, people wanting special treatment based on their skin color. That kind of narrative is never sustainable. And unfortunately, these 59 refugees are finding themselves in a situation where they jumped the gun on that, and now they've left their lives that I imagine was much better in South Africa, and they are living in squalor. They are living as immigrants that are very poor in the US, and of course, no one cares about them because no one cared about them from the beginning. They were only pawns in a political chessboard that they did not even understand.
And Madeline, what jumps out to me about what you're saying is we have this almost split screen between what you're describing their life is like now and how they looked in May of 2025 when they were being welcomed here. They were holding American flags. They had smiles on their faces. When you asked refugee groups about these issues with the resettlement process, what are they telling you? How common is this?
Well, from what I could tell, I mean, there is an entire network of people as they come. I mean, people I spoke to came as soon as 2 weeks ago. And what they do is, they have a network through social media groups and WhatsApp, and they're all realizing, oh no, I'm stuck in this hotel. I only have a certain amount of food. They don't have transportation. They don't have the right clothing. I talked to 3 refugees who are in Detroit. It's very cold there. They do not have coats. So they're realizing that they really feel alone. So I think with that original group, now we're sort of seeing, I think so far, over 1,600 Afrikaner refugees have come. And now we're seeing sort of the cracks in the system here when it comes to how these resettlement agencies work. They have regional offices all throughout the United States where the money from the federal government trickles down. Some of them, one refugee resettlement agency, their federal expenditures topped $727 million in fiscal year 2024. So I think we have to ask here, why are these refugees being told there's no budget for food, or there's no other apartments or places to show them that are in safe and sanitary areas?
So Madeline, in our last few moments, what are these resettlement groups telling you? And are other refugee groups expressing the same amount of challenges?
The final thing I'll say about this is that we must remember that this is not some innocent thing that AfriForum did, that Trump did, that Elon Musk did, that was supported by some of the right-wing extremists in South Africa and some white people groups, because there was real consequences for this. People have died from this. Remember that Trump saying that there's white genocide in South Africa, it led to him putting in policies that cut things like USAID, which was providing millions of dollars for people to get medicine for HIV and AIDS, for some support in villages in South Africa. So millions of people have died for this because they thought that there's a genocide happening here in South Africa. And now all that's happening is that Afrikaners are suffering in America, and really nothing good has come out of this situation. This should remind everyone that the price of hate is very expensive. It's too high to pay, and it's never worth it. It is very hard, I'm sure, as a white person to stay in South Africa and actually work through the discomfort and work through the discourse and be frustrated by the ANC and be frustrated by black people and not understand why they do things the way they do them. But unfortunately, this is your country too. You are not an observer. You don't have the right to just look from the outside and say, ah, this should be done for me, this shouldn't be done for me. It is your right to actually get your hands dirty and talk to Black South Africans and talk to people and try to find out what's going on and support channels like this that do the same, that try to talk to everyone and figure out how everyone is thinking and what we can do to all move forward together and get out from under the tyranny of the terrible ANC. So you don't get to go to America and think that's going to be the heaven. They're going to care about you more than South Africans care about you, because that is simply not true. And whenever that happens, you are probably being used as a political pawn.